now, the highly anticipated MODE 65. Currently in pre-order, it offers 3 different mounting methods and a mountain of different configurations and materials. We have a very high-end version of this board in-house today, and I found a couple things throughout the course of this review that really raised my own expectations when it comes to custom keyboards. You ready? Let's go! The 65 from MODE is currently in unlimited pre-sale and running a 3-month lead time for delivery. They vary wildly in price based on options, starting at $299 US. The one we're looking at today is loaded, and it comes in at just over $500. To add some context, the Tofu 65 starts around $175. The KBD 67 Mark II at $230. The D65 starts around $279, with the E-colors fetching like a $40 price increase. MODE sent this kit out on loan for review, which I respect. I have no financial relationship with them whatsoever. This is a prototype, so little finish issues are to be expected. They did allow me to put together my dream build via their online builder, which is a truly excellent way to plan the demise of your finances. Check it out for yourself if you haven't yet. First off, I rarely mention the unboxing experience, but in this case, it's almost impossible not to. On a personal note, I generally appreciate a more minimalist approach to packaging. I've become really aware of the waste that we generate through consumerism since starting a YouTube channel. As a consumer, I genuinely appreciate feeling like my dollar went into the product versus the packaging. That said, MODE offers what I can only describe as a luxury unboxing experience. Everything is branded, everything is packed very well, it's organized, it takes a while to open everything. If you're the type of consumer that's really wowed by that process, this unboxing experience delivers. It's really important to keep in mind today that while some choices are purely aesthetic, the selection of the plate material and the bottom case specifically are going to affect the feel and the sound of this board. I only have one configuration here today, so I encourage you to watch as much coverage as you can on this board to get a feel for the different configs. I really would have liked them to include an aluminum bottom portion as well, so I could have created a more well-rounded review for you guys. For the lower body, I went with the silver mirror finish because I just had to see it for myself. It's PVD coated brass. It's ridiculously heavy at like 1.3 kilos, and it feels absolutely top end as a result. This is the most expensive upgrade at 135 bucks, and it's easily the least practical. It looks beautiful, of course, but it's also obviously a fingerprint magnet and one of the most difficult things I've ever tried to film. Because this is a prototype, we see stuff like not doing final passes to remove the tooling marks. Also, where the feet indentations are, we see the mirror finish chipping away on the edges. This is straight out of the box as well. There was no handling of any sort between the unboxing and the footage here, and it's present on all 4 areas. To help mitigate some of this, I put the rubber feet on the bottom of the case at my earliest opportunity because during a review, these boards are assembled and disassembled multiple times. I would also assume that this finish will likely be prone to surface scratching, but I'm obviously not going to attempt to test this. I was very careful with this piece throughout the review. My take on this is that even if this piece was pristine perfect from the factory, which I'm confident that it will be in the final retail, it's still a pricey upgrade and it's not really practical to daily drive unless you don't mind a little natural wear and tear. I went with lilac for the top plate. I knew I wanted this the moment I saw it because it gave me the perfect opportunity to pull my analog dreams set out. It's very lightweight, the anodizing feels good, looks good, and all the measurements and tooling are very precise. When I first opened it, it looked like there was some discoloration in the anodizing, but luckily it just needed to be cleaned. I was able to rub whatever it is off the color without using any chemicals, and the finish looked perfect after, so I suspect this won't be an issue in the finals. They give us 3 different mounting options. In all cases, the PCB and the plate assembly mounts to the top housing. The first 2 options are just the choice of using silicone dampening sleeves on the mounting points. This comes standard. The third option is to include this silicone mat for an additional $20 in the lower for what they call a stack mount. Notably missing from this board is any sign of pour-on dampeners or inserts, which have been very prevalent since the marketing wave of gasket mount boards hit. The way the case assembles is pretty unique as well. It's a clamshell that hooks on this little lip on the lower and then it folds closed. And this leaves 4 little areas under these segments, so the screws are completely concealed. The back piece then conceals all that business and attaches with 2 magnets. I went for the multicolor titanium finish on the back piece because it's sick. It again is the most expensive at 50 bucks. There are a couple other premium options and plenty of no additional cost options as well. It's nice too because while the top of the board obviously isn't visible, you still get a visual of having like this 1/4-inch strip running across the length of the top. These magnets are firm enough that moving or handling the board without dislodging the back piece is no issue. The removal has to be intentional. If you specifically try to wiggle it around by the corner, you can, which is to be expected. It's also worth noting that if you get the same color back piece as your case, you'll have a visible seam running across the top of your board anyway, so you may as well go with something different than your case color. On the desk, it's a really flat board, a 5.5-degree typing angle, and the front height is 19 millimeters. So you can easily use this board without a rest, and it's very comfortable to type on for extended periods. No RGB, no underglow, no LED indicators of any sort, very clean and minimal. The PCB comes in both hot swap and dedicated ANSI and ISO layouts, and solderable, which supports both. Stepped caps and split backspace are reserved for solderable only, but amazingly, they've managed to include support for both 6.25U and 7U bottom rows on the hot swap version. I would absolutely recommend the hot swap PCB for most users, but I hate myself, so I opted for the solderable PCB with the half plate in FR4. The PCB itself is gorgeous. It supports QMK and VIA. It comes from Brazilian designer Gondolindra. In addition to having some curvy geometry similar to like a live edge wood design, it's got long horizontal cutout slots, flex cuts, similar to the Wilbur Weird Flex. So you've got this center portion that flexes independently of the rest of the PCB. I use the Salvation regularly, and I've always been curious what the half plate experience would be like on that board, so I opted to go that way here. Now, this is my first half plate board, but without a full plate to stabilize the center portion of that PCB, this creates quite possibly the best typing experience I've had yet. I definitely bottom out when I type, and you can feel a resonance, like a definite and obvious vibration under each key press. It's a great feeling. If you really get after it, you can feel this whole center portion flex under you. Mode does offer plate foam for a $10 upcharge. I neglected to include this when I put together my build, and I'm really glad that I did. I usually dampen my boards any way that I can. Most of the time, that's because there's some aspect of the acoustics that I don't like a ping or like a brash hollow sound. This is one of the few keyboards I've used that I actually appreciate the character of the acoustics, and there's no immediate negative drawbacks to that sound at all. In my opinion, it would be a shame to mute the 65 with loads of case foam. Switches here are Mode's own reflex linear switch, which are JWK V2s, so palm polycarb nylon stack. Despite them coming lightly factory lubed, I did take the time to do a quick lube on the stem and springs. I probably should have filmed them as well, but they sound and feel good. It's also the first time I've spent with a lighter spring, 63.5 grams, and I really enjoy it versus my usual 67-gram weight, so I think I'm going lighter from here on out. Stabs are Duroc V2s as well, solid choice, so no issues, and the plate offers pretty generous access to them if they need any maintenance down the line. I'll have full, complete sound test for you at the end of the video. Remember, I can only comment about the board I have in front of me. This brass lower is going to deaden the overall sound of the board, and that FR4 half plate is really flexy and bouncy. Based on some of the other sound tests I've heard of this board out there, I think I may have hit the jackpot right out of the gate with this setup. That FR4 half plate is fucking chef's kiss. So my favorite mounting method of the three is the isolated top mount. It's a subtle difference from the standard top mount. It smooths out the feel and the sound a bit, and I vastly prefer it to the stack mount, which dampens up the sound and really stiffens up the flexibility, which was the core intent of this build. With the half plate, you still get the subtle reverberations on bottom mount, but it's definitely not the same experience. These options, of course, would have different effects or levels of intensity depending on your plate material and your bottom housing material, but if you opted to go for a flexi plate and a brass lower, I think you made the right call. So the conclusion's pretty straightforward today. We've seen a lot of 65% boards, and at first glance, there's nothing really exciting about the actual geometry of this board, especially when you compare it to something like the Phase 1 that we looked at recently. It's pretty obvious from looking at the renders that this was intentional. From its tooling and internal design, Mode demonstrates that they could have made this board as complex as they wanted, but they opted to keep it clean. It doesn't feel like they were trying to reinvent the wheel here. It feels like they were trying to perfect it. The fact that you can get this board in just about any configuration you can think of, and that all these components are available as individual extras, really solidifies that. It's key to remember too that the brass lower, which feels like a really clutch part of the equation to me, is a $105 upcharge. That makes this a $400 kit, not a $300 kit. Not cheap, but I would personally stretch for the brass. While I'm not sold on the idea of the mirror finish add-on, and I trust the QC issues I saw in the lower case won't be present in the final version, the 65 is just an absolute joy to type on and listen to. Anytime a keyboard makes me choose keyboard sounds over my headphones when I'm working, it's definitely doing something right. I'm a big fan of this board in this configuration, and despite having a fairly impressive collection of small form factor customs, I find myself really wanting to purchase a copy of my own. I gotta thank Brilliant for sponsoring today's video. Brilliant is an online learning platform that puts a big focus on interactive learning. With Brilliant, you're not just passively watching content or memorizing facts and formulas, you're interacting like you're actually doing. This year, they've been revamping a lot of their content to really dial up that level of interactivity. They've just released a new version of their course, Calculus in a Nutshell. Ha! Nutshell. I was awful at calc when I was in school, but this course uses visual and physical intuition to help tackle the major principles. I'm such a big fan of Brilliant because there's no intimidation. Even on really complex topics, it always feels like I'm learning in more than one way at the same time. It's really intuitive, so if something is not coming together, it doesn't just give me the answer, it helps me understand why. There's a huge catalog of courses too, so no matter what your course of study, if it revolves around math and science, Brilliant definitely has you covered. When you're ready to get smarter, you can join me and a community of over 8 million educators and learners by going to brilliant.org/badseedtech, and the first 200 of you to do so will save 20% off the annual subscription. Big thanks to Brilliant for continuing to support the channel, and thank you so much for your time. I know how valuable it is, and this channel simply wouldn't be what it is without the support from our sponsors. All right, I think that's it. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Stay up.